So, and I've done
Awesome.
other jobs while I homeschool, but they're just kind of for fun jobs.
Okay. Well, let's go Alex, Jason, Sarah.
Alex Lau. I've been working, I live in St. Paul, and I've been working remotely since January 1st of 2018. So it's been about 2 years. And
I'm
before
Jason Kane.
I worked in
Oh,
the business. Sorry, Jason, I would do
no,
that. And
that was
before
a
that,
long pause.
well, I was about to do
You,
that.
horrible thing.
Like every day for like 7 years or 8 years or something like that. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I'm Jason Kane. I have been working at home. I'm in St. Paul, and I've been working at home since September 1st of 2016. So my little tracker, it's been 1,306 days since I've been working at home, away from an office environment. And the change to go from home was working at an architecture firm as an architect to I quit and started my own business as architectural visualization artist. And so with changing to a remote office environment, I changed what I do. And so I just changed a lot of things. So we kind of, I'll try and separate my work at home stuff from my business stuff, but it was kind of a, but yeah, I've got 3.5 years so far of doing this. And I, for one,
Oh, say that again. You paused.
oh shoot, I like it. I like what I do. I like being at home. Home good. Internet connection bad?
Cool. Sarah?
All right, Sarah
Joy?
Joy, come
Yeah, I'm
on.
sorry.
Sarah Joy Propay. I've been working from home for about a little over a year now. Similar to Jason, in terms of I started a new business, so kind of career shift a little bit. Formerly worked in real estate development for a developer here in town, and then moved into doing my own business, doing still real estate related work with churches specifically. So yeah, I would say that like there was a lot of transition and learning in the process of working from home, but I would also say that COVID has kind of even thrown that back up in the air for me as well. So it hasn't been like, oh, this is just feels like normal. Like it's kind of brought up some of the same struggles I had initially with working from home. So
Um, yeah, and that's such a, yeah, it's not just a normal environment of like, oh, we're switched to working at home, but
yeah.
it's a unique world that we're living in right now. Um, so I'm excited for us to, yeah, just dig in and see how we can navigate that well. Um, and yeah, and feel free to just kind of like throw in anything, whether it's from the past couple of years of working or just even new stuff from the past couple of weeks and anytime responding. What were some unexpected outcomes from working from home? Whoever wants to go.
I'll kick things off. I'll first say one kind of deeper level tension is just this notion that it's been a privilege to continue to work and being grateful to be able to work, while at the same time that's not like the land of milk and honey. So it's like sometimes feeling this guilt of talking about some of the challenges of remote work, even though it's a privilege to be able to work. So I can totally see where an outside perspective is like, how could you talk about the negatives of, when you actually have a job? And a lot of people would certainly like that. But so that's just kind of thematically. And one other thing, I guess, before I dive in, I do think sometimes in a sinful way, I just look at everything as like, what can I do to maximize productivity? and I just think that's so American and not necessarily gospel ridden. So take things with a grain of salt. But one unexpected outcome for me that came out of remote work is just like, I'm with Jason. I love it because life became a lot more efficient. Once you figured out your rhythms, life became a lot more efficient. And like one like very kind of specific anecdote is So I didn't mention that I'm in sales and marketing. I manage an entry-level sales team at a company out of Austin, Texas, and I also run a side business as well, where I manage a few subcontractors doing similar type of work. But look, not everything you do throughout the day needs 100% of your attention. Sometimes you're participating in calls and sometimes you're participating in meetings. And candidly, I multitask when I do that. So like I'll put away dishes and clean dishes or make my bed. And one unexpected outcome that's a positive is I could consolidate literally all of my what a typical person would have all their chores in the middle of the day, such that it frees space in the evenings and also in the weekends. Or I can schedule time in my calendar to do anything that would take time, doing chores or going out and running errands. And so that's one very positive, unexpected outcome that came from I just gained back a lot of efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, just commute alone, I mean, for me there's so much going on, but I mean, the commute all of a sudden just gaining 40 to hour plus of your day back, my case at least, going to Minneapolis and back was just a huge thing. And that was an expected outcome. That was a reason for doing this. But yeah, I'm with Alex on the idea of lunch and breaks and start-stop times and being able to tackle errands or house projects. You can just kind of break to do those things and come back and click back in. And I found an unexpected outcome. I really upped my social interactions, which is kind of ironic to talk about in the nature of COVID. But ultimately, I'm a big introvert. And so this office thing really worked out. Didn't have any of those social interactions. I really stepped up my breakfast and coffees and other hangouts. And I guess now in like in the month of March, I guess that's like now you have more opportunity to Zoom friends and text more or something like that. But I mean, I really got more intentional with my social interactions. And I've really had to learn over the last few years of like discipline versus motivation has been kind of a key thing for structuring certain elements of my day.
Yeah, I would say, echo kind of the things that Jason and Alex have already said. In particular, for me, one of the benefits was more activity of getting to be physically active, because I could take those breaks in the middle of the day and I could go take a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood instead of a smoke break if I smoked, things like that. And it gave me the space and time to really physically engage, and that was really, really helpful, instead of sitting at a desk and feeling like you had to cram it in at the end of the day before you go to bed. So that was encouraging. And then too, for me, I'm a big cook and baker too, so it's also allowed me to do kind of like meal prep between meetings and things like that. Again, similar to what Alex is saying of like washing dishes while you're so it allows you to do some of those multitasking chores, which can be kind of fun and also a way to break things up. And I think it also sometimes is like more inspiring, because if you're engaged in these creative tasks while you're also engaging in your work, if you can be doing that, like sometimes that actually gets the brain firing better than just sitting in a meeting room staring at the wall, like having these conversations with people. So that's been kind of a fun element too.
Yeah, I was telling Alex before everyone joined that I've never eaten so well. Hi, Rachel. That I've never eaten so well like throughout the entire week as the past couple weeks, especially because we have all different housemates. We're making meals together. So what? Go ahead.
Can I add on to that? I would say too, like give yourself the permission to do those things too. That was, and I don't know if I'm going to move into a different question here, but that was one of my biggest struggles, is giving myself permission to not be sitting in front of the computer, on the screen all day, 8 hours, 8 to 5, like I would be if I was sitting in my office. And that took a lot for me to work through that and to say that it's okay, because I'm still getting my work done and I don't have to be just a body in a chair to prove that. And so I think that that's something that's been a big struggle for me, and I've come to a better place of allowing myself to enjoy that space and time.
Yeah, I think the follow-up question I'd have to that is, yeah, just what is that? How has this transformed your idea of what is being full time? What is uh, work life balance, and being really proud of the work that you've put in when it's less of just like I was in the office.
Mhm.
Thematically, I am feel like I'm always on, but I'm always off at the same time. I try really hard not to schedule things on Sunday because I can, to a fault, be a slave to my calendar Monday through Saturday, which means I do work on Saturdays. Not like a full 8 hour day, but will I throw in an hour or two or three? I'm sure others probably do, because I do take liberties throughout the week. And so, um, yeah, so how I've had to work and process through that is twofold. So one, kind of always on, always off, but then building the discipline of like when you have something scheduled, like the discipline of turning off technology, notifications, any distractions. So like just being 100% here.
Yep.
You know, thinking about this panel.
It was I don't even know if it was 1 year or 2 years ago, but I was never required to have my email on my phone as a job. Like that, they obviously they preferred if you did, but they didn't force anyone. But it was a year or two that I actually turned off email notifications on my phone. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm holding those lives in my hand. Fine. Good people, but like we like I knew what I had to do, but I knew that I would be there for the time. So I like during my office time, I would get to my email, and then when I was away from my computer, my actual physical space, I could turn off my work and that because Brian, when you said at the beginning of this meeting, like you're just kind of working around the clock. My separate space, I have my physical bedroom as an office. I really do kind of like come into my business and I walk away from it. And I think that is kind of key. And not to say that everyone has an extra bedroom or space, but somehow separating some area as their working zone, and kind of almost drawing some lines around that. I mean, I had kind of clear delineation by taking it off my phone. That really allowed me to keep it separate. When I was in my office, I was working, but when I was not, I was kind of free of it. That was a big big part for me.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. So I'm very strict about I only work at my desk. I never pull up my laptop. I have a chair in my room. I never pull up my laptop when I'm sitting on that chair. I do sometimes on the couch, but that's more usually like personal related work and stuff like that, not proximity project related work. So I'm pretty strict about only being at my desk and having that space be reserved for that. Another thing too that's been really helpful for me to turn work off is that at the end of the day, I will sit down and make a list of the things that I want to do the next day. And for some reason that helps my brain kind of like let go and release it and say, okay, you're done. Like, you know what you're going to do tomorrow and you can let go. So that's also been something that's helpful for me to step away and call it an end.
One small like anecdote, I guess, I never start the day with work.
Yeah.
Like, because for whatever reason, whenever I start the day with work, it just, I don't know what the mysticism is in that, but it's either going to be exercise for me. I think Brian, you shared you'll wake up early and just read for 90 minutes, something not work related.
Right.
Others, if you're a musician, I encourage music. If you don't have, I guess, people in the home, probably wouldn't enjoy your drums or whatnot, or discipleship group or prayer or devotion. For me, I don't do that personally as well. I need like accountability of a group, but just something not work related before going into work, for some reason, help sharpen my mind and just be more productive when I'm actually doing the work.
I completely agree. I now start my work day later than I would get to my physical office when I worked at my architecture firm. and do what little I could to get out the door, to get to my office before everyone else did. And then I would try and leave that office as soon as I tried to minimize the amount of time I was away from the house effectively. But now I get up early, exercise, coffee, read, breakfast, shower, get to my workday a solid 2 hours after I've gotten up. Just because it just frames my day better to get up and roll right into it.
What other rituals or structures do you guys have in, kind of talk about these kind of beginning of your workday? Do you have things that kind of, Sarah Joy mentioned how she ends her workday with a sticky note? And then how much of that do you guys have complete flexibility, or how often are you juggling responsibilities to be on or connected with different people at different times?
One of the things I do is so I was self-employed for about 18 months, and being able to say no to work because you've made commitments outside of work, and I think so much for me has had to do with promise making, promise keeping for things I'm just engaged or involved with outside of work, and not letting, like, I'll get work calls, but I'm on do not disturb, so I'm not going to respond, right? And so, because there's life outside of work, and so setting up those disciplines have been critical for me too. What was the question again, David?
Rituals.
Making commitments outside of work and then sticking to those commitments. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, and it's more of a guideline. Sure. But I have found that folks who work remotely, who will drop commitments or don't want to make commitments because work may come up, right, have a tendency to have a higher levels of anxiety, just because they can't. That's not life. Like, you got to make commitments outside of work and then follow through with those to maintain some form of balance.
For me, throughout the day too, I mean, like I said, I multitask some, but also, at least once an hour, I make sure that I get up, walk around for 5 minutes, do the, I mean, and maybe you all don't struggle with this, but it's really funny. I have another friend who we were on a hike like a week ago, and she's working from home for the first time. And she asked me, she's like, what do you do about like going to the bathroom? I'm like, you're allowed to go. But there is, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's this like angst all of a sudden of like, well, I'm on the clock, so I should be sitting at my computer, but like that wouldn't be required at your office either. But for some reason, being in your home, for me, because that was a struggle for me, like changed this mindset of like, oh, I'm not allowed to like do these other things that would be like totally normal and standard for anybody to do.
That is too funny.
Part of it for me is I'm a consultant, and so I'm getting paid by clients hourly, and so I have to bill back some of that time. So then I struggle with like, well, how do you bill that back? And but yeah, so taking those breaks, giving yourself 5 minutes to walk around and like step away from your computer.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm with Sarah. I mean, this is just work methodology too, but I'm very much with Sarah Joy on my day-to-days are surrounded by bulleted lists that I can highlight off, and that's just gives me the rush of I'm accomplishing something. But that just helps me also structure, and it just has I just constantly how I've always operated. And yeah, I don't even, somebody was just asking last about getting up and doing things. It's like, yeah, I'm up all the time because I don't have to check with my boss about going to the bathroom or going to get a snack or something like that. And so I just can have little interactions with Britt or the kids. And we have been doing kind of family walkabouts daily as well. And that's just in the day when the day is actually particularly nice, rather than at the end of the day. It just kind of can be a break. I think it's just reminding yourself that you do have that ability to do that, to also work and getting your work accomplished. I think the 8-hour workday I grew tired of that notion back many years ago, and kind of tried to strip that from my mind and my managers' minds as time went on, because my first boss was a very button seat equaled work, and it just doesn't. My work day, my actual working hours are much shorter than probably your average day, but they're thorough, and I'm locked in on that. But it doesn't, yeah, the longer you're sitting in a single task, the less efficient you are going to be 9 times out of 10, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll also say this. I mean, rituals during COVID versus rituals versus remote.
Yeah.
Different. And
I'm a little upside down in the last few weeks for sure, too.
right now, and I think Sarah, you brought this up earlier. I mean, two things. So one positive thing about remote work is, hi Tess.
Pull up a chair.
Is I think
Be
folks,
right back. Be right back.
I can come across as like a major extrovert, but Heidi's seen this where I've shown up in like life groups and I'm just like completely shot, and it's because I've been around people all day. It's because I've been around people all day, and so when I'm around people all day, then I just like to be on my own, and my introvert mode comes on. But one huge benefit of working remotely is then like I can invest that social energy in like the church and like its people, and like going out. And I think Jason, you had mentioned this earlier, as far as you can invest in relationships like breakfast and coffees. But like so COVID ritual has been different, and I'll be candid, it's sucked. Like I depend so much on my in-person interactions. Like this has just been hot garbage, and I don't like it at all. And but kind of that wartime mentality has been like scheduling everything from when I wake up to when I go to bed. And for better or for worse, that's like what I've been doing the last 10 days, including scheduling, like going for a run, and including scheduling reading for a specific like outside of work engagement or work. Like if I showed you my calendar right now, it would look like a Tetris board. And I'm just trying to stick to it to maintain some form of normalcy. But typically I'm not like scheduling everything out, but literally I'm scheduling everything from when I wake up to when I go to bed right now during this COVID period. Families, I mean, as a father, Jason, I'm imagining this is the most unrealistic.
No, I did that for 6 months or a year, where my calendar just had every 15-minute marker down. Just, you're doing this then. Just I was trying to see if that like just disciplined regularity made sense, and it eventually waned. It was good blockers here and there, but it didn't stick well enough to continue that. And I tried to find a relic of it, and I erased it all from existence on the calendar. So but I can understand during this time, just because we are kind of in new territory, even though this being at home is the regular. It's just, yes, the fact that none of us can hang out physically, it's all digital bound at best.
So I've had like the complete opposite reaction with COVID.
Great.
Like all of my really strong, like motivated calendar and like everything, like I said, like it's been a long process for me to give myself permission to like be more flexible with my life. I feel like COVID has all of a sudden I am like way more relaxed with myself, and I'm just like letting myself live each day very like still intentionally, but much more at like a restful place. And I've been really thankful for that. And it's been interesting too, is like I've actually, which is bizarre for me, I've actually not been setting an alarm. And I know not like all of you can do that because you have to like report into work, and I don't have to report into anybody. But I've actually not been setting an alarm, and my body still wakes up like 7:30. Like I don't sleep in super late. And then I found that like I tend to have more energy at night right now. And I've just kind of let myself go with that and been like, okay, I'm recognizing that like I'm sleeping a little longer in the morning. I'm slower to get my coffee and do some Bible study and whatever, and that's okay. And then like, if I work till like 7 or 8 at night, and that's when my best energy comes and I can do that, like that's okay. Again, I know my circumstances are different because people have families and other things that, they have to, and schedules that they have to work around, and I don't have that. So, but it's been a real different way for me. So
Question for you. So I went this exercise of going 7 straight days without setting an alarm, I don't know, some 5-6 years ago, and then averaged out and to figure out my air quotes peak like sleeping. Have you like done that? Like where you're just like,
no, that'd be interesting.
Jason, hopping over to you. How pre-COVID and during COVID, how caring for the kids, how has that changed throughout your workday?
Well, it's been, I guess I have to frame, my business again is I don't have, I just set up this webcam at my office. This meeting after 3.5 years. This is the first time I've had at my business. So I don't have virtual meetings ever. I've had a handful of call-in conference calls, but my vast majority of my communication is done by email. And I'm such a production service industry that I do. So that alone is kind of like one hurdle that I don't have to deal with too often with the kids. I think the various things with working with kids at home, I've like I said already before, I have a bedroom that I have declared as the office. But even in the first few days of COVID realm, Tim Hoganson, I can just anecdotally say that he tried to work at his dining room table and that's day. And so I suggested, I was like, why don't you try and sit in one of your bathrooms if you can manage that? I don't have a problem with that idea. And so sure enough, he put an iron board on the sink and he sat in there and it worked from a privacy standpoint. So 24 hours later, he took over Halden's bedroom. But again, he needed to separate his space because I think the age and stage of the kids that would be super difficult for me. I can hear them, but typically I can have music playing or doing other things, and so that's not a big deal. I think the big thing is I've always allowed the I want to see what they're doing, and I want to see what they want to show me, because frankly, when I was at the office, I was either disrupting somebody else to show them something silly, or they were coming to me. And I mean, how much time did that add up in my average day? Coming in for 30 seconds to do a twirl. Yes, I will watch that. And so I think to quickly not like want to snap at them being like, I'm working. No, I want to see what you're doing. This is going to take a minute and you're going to interact with me, and that is okay. So that's been kind of just having that happen a lot, just realizing that that's cool. A trap that I fell into was that I started doing backseat parenting because Britt has ultimately been at home the majority of the time. And so if I hear something going on out in the public zone, and it sounds like something's getting a little out of hand, I come up to help support. Ultimately, that's Britt's got it under control. And so then me jumping in puts a new dynamic on it. And so I've kind of learned to allow them to do their homeschool routine or do their hangout, whatever they're doing out there, allow them to treat me like I'm working at my office and they're living their life there. And that's okay, because it ultimately more and more wasn't working out well when I'd come in and try and tag team, because that's rarely a good parenting strategy anyways. And then I think the other thing is just kind of giving the kids, when I rarely do have my phone conversation, it's just like I come out with kind of a placard of a 5-minute warning to everyone that I walk around and be like, we will be quiet during this time. Daddy is going to be on a call. I'll kind of give them the heads up prior to a meeting, just to kind of close down kind of a quiet zone outside of my office space. Has been important in my time. Summary complete.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you mentioned some of those pitfalls, and Sergio, you mentioned the pitfall of being like too restrictive with yourself. What have been some other pitfalls that you guys have run into?
I can go. I have more. I was thinking about with people starting this, I mean, two pitfalls that I still deal with are this website called YouTube, and then this other website called Messages for Web. And so messages, I use my, instead of my text app, I have it on my desktop, and that has been great because it's like I have my instant messenger, and that is also can be bad. And same with YouTube. It is ultimately when I'm like, instead of podcasting, I'm listening to interviews and stuff on YouTube. Most of the time I try and have it on a minimized window. Other times it's just up and I'm watching it, and I don't track how poor my productivity probably goes down. So that has been a trap. And so I was kind of thinking with people in kind of this new realm of being at home, I was wondering if I was going to say, like, if you happened to have filters at your office to stop like video channels or social media channels or those kind of things, like maybe try and work same ethos at home, even though you could have the freedom to burn some time on some pointless YouTube video or text with people. Because I have found like, oh, I've been doing this for a half hour, time to get back to my job. That has been a trap, and I don't have anyone but myself to keep me on the straight and narrow with wasting my time. So that definitely has been a personal struggle for kind of the last couple of years, I would say.
I think a pitfall for me has been like selfishness and just rigidity to schedule. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but you know, I'll just want to move from one thing to the next, and sometimes there are just life situations that don't allow for that, and I'm not very, very good at allowing those to break down the schedule, unless I'm enjoying it, right? And it's like a heart-to-heart conversation with my roommate. That's different than dealing with my father, for instance. So from my standpoint, yeah, in a past life, it was framed as the ministry of presence. I'm not very good at the ministry of presence, of just having space in your life for community to happen, for spontaneity to happen, for life to happen, for evangelism to happen, because I'm so focused on this thing. I'm here, and then I'm on to the next thing, thinking of that thing, right? So that's been a pitfall.
I think for me, there's a couple of things. One is like being way too tied to my email. Because when you're at a job and you're in an office with other people, you have other meetings you leave your desk for, you have, you go talk to your coworkers for a while, different things like that. So when it's just me and I'm like sitting there at my desk, I feel like I just like check email like 1,000 times a day, and rather than like interrupting like a train of thought and just to like go check my email, and it's so dumb. You're like, why am I doing this? Like I was on this good train of thought, and then I like totally derailed myself. But I think it's real easy to do. It's kind of like the YouTube stuff. You just kind of get like sucked down into this. So, and then I think like another pitfall for me has been, I am somebody I'm an extrovert. I really like to bounce ideas off of people. It's been really, really hard for me to be working on my own and not having that camaraderie of being able to like pop over the cubicle to my coworker and like say like, hey, I have this idea. Am I thinking about this? What do you think? Like, does this make sense? And just have that kind of like give and take. And I'm guessing that you all have less of that right now in some ways, maybe. And so for me, it's been like a real struggle of like self-doubt in that of like, do I even know what I'm doing? Like, because I just don't have that like support system of a team in place. And so you all probably still have some of that just because through your Slack channels or like different things that your team is doing. But I do think it probably feels different in a lot of ways because you don't have that physical presence. And that just changes dynamics a lot. So it's been hard and feeling isolated and alone in my work in many ways, and not quite sure if I'm tracking well with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll key off of that a little. I guess what I'm hearing in general is kind of a polarity in people's reaction to isolation. and whether it's more discipline or less discipline. So I fall towards I've been very disciplined, or very productive, or very focused, or whatever, in my bedroom. Um, it's been hard to distract me, and it's been hard to tear me away to get some exercise or go downstairs for lunch or that sort of thing. And part of that is, when I'm in my office, I have habits of taking walks around the office every hour and a half, or whenever my computer crashes or whatever comes first. Um, and I'm not a social butterfly in the office, uh, but there are people that I interact with at least on a weekly basis. Like I might walk by their cube 4 times a day, but I might talk to them, socially once a week. Um, and I'm just, what do I do with that now? What do I do with those relationships now? They're not, if I don't have a work, um, if I don't have a work excuse to stop and work something out with somebody, I guess, do I just call people and interrupt their day out of the blue? Or do I just sort of put all those sort of casual relationships on hold for a few months and call them, or see them afterwards?
Yeah, what are your guys'
So how do I
thoughts?
interrupt?
Sorry.
How do I casually interrupt people? I don't know. There's some folks I'm sort of interested in, but what do I say? Like, um, I guess I could IM them, but I don't usually
Right.
IM them. I usually
Yeah.
just cross their paths. My actual work team, I'm in kind of a unique situation because my team of 18 people or so, everyone else is in the same office in Indiana, and I've always been the remote guy, and so I've always not been part of the casual hallway conversations and after meeting conversations. Um, so that's not new for me um, being on the outside, uh, or being disconnected from people, being or disembodied anyway. But it is new for all of them, and so I did. I'm sure if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have. But I did get us having a daily water cooler, um, WebEx, um, and I didn't know if anybody would come, but pretty much everybody comes and they stay for longer than they're supposed to. And so, I mean, these people, they call themselves, really, not antisocial, but I think that they're way more social and way more extroverted than they give themselves credit for. All these, you know, nerdy Chinese and Indian, sort of withdrawn, very quiet,
Can I jump off of that, and like
folks.
how do you guys uh think about, just, I mean, you're all in different jobs. Jason's more on kind of contracting with different connections, very project focused. Just how do you think about work relationships in general? Or maybe it's changed in this recent weeks, but of how much do the can those yeah, just how do you think about it? Are they relationships? Do they feel very contractual and task oriented?
Yeah,
What do you do with it?
for me, it is more compartmentalized, and I'll talk about do like a tight, kind of succinct small talk, and then there are times with coworkers, and I'll just check in and just say, how are things going? Everything outside of work, and just ask the question directly. I kind of go back I did not like water cooler talk. I did not like it. For me, it was like, why don't we just sprint in our work and like schedule a beer at 4 p.m.? Like, what are we doing? And and so I do not miss that at all. And if there are ways, I'm sorry, I really don't, because it's allowed me to foster relationships that I'd prefer to invest in, and things local outside of work. And this whole notion of finding community in work, I'm thankful that there's less of that, frankly, because work to me, and I'm going to go on a slight tangent. Like I've told my team, look, and I check in on my team, and we do talk about life. So the folks that report to me, I'm like mentoring someone through studying the LSAT per se, and then talking about family life and all that stuff, right? But like, it's a merit-based reality. And so when people talk about companies as families per se, I'm just like, no, we're not. It's like families are not merit-based reality. So it's a bit of a tangent, but
Sorry, your mother left.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I fired Sebastian earlier today.
He had it coming.
He had it
I don't
coming.
miss that.
No pay.
Meet your new mom.
I'm completely opposite. Like, I loved my work relationships. And it was like, I mean, they learned, if you sit down in a meeting, you got to ask Sarah Joy how her weekend is before you like start the meeting, because that means a lot to her. So yeah. So I mean, I don't work with those same coworkers anymore because now I have my own business, but at the same time, because I don't have, like I said, I don't have that place to like bounce ideas off of people, I've gotten more courageous with calling people in the middle of the day who are people I've known in the industry, and been able just to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Or like, hey, how's it going? And more often than not, they're more than willing to like chat for a few minutes, and they don't see it as like a ginormous interruption to their day. If I was doing it like every day for, half an hour at a time, that'd be overkill. But I think that like calling a coworker over the lunch hour or something and just being like, hey, just like, yeah, we've been on Slack, but I totally want to hear like, how are things going? I mean, even having this conversation that we're having tonight with a coworker, I think would be so helpful, because they're going to be in the same boat, I guarantee you. And so yeah. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I mean, when I was saying one trap was messaging, messages for web, I mean, but I do use that as my coworkers at this time. It's just like I casually email people I work with, like the teams that I'm part of, kind of when I build a rapport, and I'll just check in with them on. So I kind of look at email as like the casual. I send something, I don't expect something back quickly. Texting, I maybe might expect something back in a little quicker fashion, but I also treat it pretty easygoing too. I might get a text and not respond to it for a while. But it's just like, those are my touch points that I use quite a bit to actually have that interactivity. Maybe I'm not calling people, I'm not calling work-related people. I might call a friend during the day, just if I know that they're kind of in the same boat right now, and it can just shoot the breeze for 15 minutes. I'll do that too. But I mean, I really do just keep informed via both my email and instant messenger, or texting on my desktop quite often, because otherwise I am just sitting in silence for the day in my own thoughts. Yeah. And I can kind of do that, but it's also nice to have people.
Jason, are you an extrovert or introvert?
I'm a introvert, very much so. I haven't at all since I started. This has been the best thing for me. I love it. I mean, I like you people too, but I'm good.
In moderation.
In moderation.
Man, Jason and I grabbed a beer and a burger at Blue Door Pub a few weeks ago. That was great. Like, I love that. I can do that before.
Yeah.
Back in the good old days.
Yeah, back in the good old days. Thank you.
Back in the good, going out.
Yeah.
How?
digital hangout.
So I have a
Oh,
question.
Brian's got a question.
You asked.
I did.
I'm very interested in this list at the end of the day thing, Sarah Joy, and I guess I'm interested in these issues of like organizing just massive amounts of unstructured time. My work is very conceptual. I have, like everybody, I have 100 little things I've got to do in a day. But then so much of it is big and conceptual.
Yeah.
I read an article today that I forwarded the panelists that talked about every day setting 3 goals. These are the 3 things that you want to get done. Even if you don't get any of them done, to be extraordinarily clear about the goals that you want to do. And so Jason and Alex, I heard you guys in different ways talk about just sort of figuring out what it is that you need to do and kind of breaking it down in chunks. And I guess I find that like the workplace and the ordinary pre-COVID work rhythms had a way of constantly helping me process what it is that I need to prioritize and do. And now, as you guys were saying, there's sort of these vast stretches where you're just in your own head. And I don't think, for the next couple of months, I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of that environment. And so I'm more looking for ways to just sort of like organize big chunks of time. And so like the idea of the list at the end of the day, or in the article, setting 3 goals or whatever it is, 2 or 4 goals. That to me was helpful. Do you guys have advice that maybe is a riff off of that, or some other ways of thinking about organizing big chunks of time?
Well, I have a question for you, Brian. Like when you say that you have, 100 little things, I know that's what you're saying. You have 100 little things to do in a day. But I mean,
yeah,
is that the sort of thing that you actually have itemized out anywhere? Like,
no, it bubbles up.
Do you keep that all in? And do you have a running list? Do you write that kind of stuff down? Or I mean,
I do. I have a number. Yeah, I have a number of different, I've got a Slack thing, and so people are messaging me there. I've got emails, and then I've got a list of stuff that I need to do for people at different times. And so I'm able to sort of manage that urgent workflow, but then there's sort of the important stuff. And now all of a sudden, I mean, in some ways it's a gift because I've got all this time, but it also feels like it's a little oppressive, especially just sort of in your echo chamber, to sort of break that down. Maybe this is a Sarah Joy problem.
I'm like, welcome to my world for the past the echo chamber of my head. It's painful. But I mean, one of the things that I have done, because I'm like that too, where I have like 5 different, I have like 3 different email accounts, and I have like a thing over here that I need to check. And then I start, and you're talking about like you have a Slack channel, you have emails and stuff like that. And I just started going really old school, and like I have a notebook that I write, and each day is a new page. And I have 2 different major contracts.
Okay, so that, Jason, you just lifted up something too. Show us these technologies.
This is technology.
I have my own
technology
paper that are for my project. Each project has my schedule on it. It has my to-dos, and I just go to physical lists on each project. And I'm not intimidated by seeing 100 things on a list.
Yeah.
I know internally, like what, if there's a higher priority, obviously I'm doing that, but like I can more pick and choose. I'm like, what am I interested in working on right now? I can do this and this and this. And I can look at that list, and I'm kind of more of the do the next thing kind of person, rather than, there can be total times when that can be paralyzing. But when I at least just see the beast, then you just start hitting it, and you just start ticking thing, again, I was joking, like, to highlight is to release endorphins. To
Highlight
show
is your check off.
I've completed that. I will never look through that highlighter again as to what I did.
Yeah.
It is like erased from my mind. And again, there's plenty of like online lists. And I mean, I also do a Google Keep list that always is with me. So if I remember something in life or work, I can pull up my phone and add it at the time that I remember it, because I rely on that heavily to always be with me. But then when it comes to project specific things, I keep separate project sheets with running lists that I have to use.
With you, Brian, like what I've done is I have, my specific contract. So each contract listed out, and then the list of things under that contract for the day. But then I also have, like, I've been working on a toolkit that's just like my own business development type work. So I separate out that and list that as kind of a client. And then I have my list under that of what needs to be developed to make that happen. And then, so you were talking about like the conceptual stuff. That gets its own category and it gets its own list. So
yeah, one of the things we've been going through on my full-time gig of taking like 4 broad categories that we're marching towards, and then when does a good week of work feel like? And so this was a pillow talk conversation with my bunkmate Brian. So he's a lawyer, and I asked him. So 2 things were happening. So one, I was getting challenged to break these concepts into discrete work elements. So get real specific with what 1 hour of work looks like. I was about to share my screen and show something called Trello. It's kind of an older kind of project management dashboard. But taking these concepts and saying, okay, what's an hour worth of work? Be really specific. Like, here's what I'm going to accomplish in 1 hour. And then I went to my roommate, who's a lawyer, and I was like, okay, Merv, a lawyer, a good 40-hour work week. How many billable hours are there? He says, comfortably, really productive week, 30 to 34 billable hours. And so you take these large concepts, you break them down into these cards or tiles that are about an hour a piece. And in different categories, there's different types of work that take about an hour. And then try to bill 30 to 33 to 34 hours a week and feel good with it, and you may not, and so it's just something that just adds a little bit more discreteness to what can sometimes feel like just a subjective slog.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a sort of analog, physical Trello person. I use sticky notes and organize things, spatially object-oriented. And but of course, those I kind of left on the wall in the office. I do have space on the wall in front of me where I'm sitting right now, where I need to reconstitute some of that. I do have a photo, but that's more sort of big picture, advancing tasks through their life cycle. I guess it can go as finely detailed as you want, but we're talking a few words on a sticky note.
Brian, I think that when you're in education and relational ministry type work, I think with what I do with all of my groups that I manage and homeschooling and stuff, I really actually have a daily schedule for myself, because I think that type of work is a little different, because you do have a lot of like visionary stuff and conceptual stuff you're working on, where for me, even when I've been with the kids all day and I've taught them, I can get caught up in like researching things or working till really late at night on stuff that I'm trying to do with like a homeschool group or a ministry thing, and it just starts to consume all my time. So I'm just trying to learn to just completely shut it off, because I think it can, if you're a visionary at all, it can kind of suck you in, and it's a different kind of work. So, I think when I give myself, I make myself a schedule in Google Sheets, and I never follow it exactly, but I have it there, and I know, like, we do Bible in the morning. It's like a school schedule, but then even in the
Yeah.
afternoon, I have stuff like, this is when we start making dinner. This is when we do this stuff, and it helps the kids and it helps me stop. So that might be helpful for you if you're like me and you just,
Yeah.
because I'm not a scheduled person and I don't follow it well, but it at least keeps me back on track, and then it helps me to stop when I keep going. So
Yeah, thank you.
David, should we wrap this up?
If you don't mind, I'll have one more question. What is my question? It's bubbling around in my mind. How has just so as like Brian, you're talking about, like working really long, and how have just this period of time where it's not just, okay, we're working from home, and so the normal structures are gone, but there's also a like global pandemic and neighborhoods that are in crises and family members maybe that are affected in different ways. In what ways have these influenced just how you even think about, like, what are my priorities right now? How do I continue to be faithful at what I've been entrusted in my work, with whatever commitments I've made there, and that there's maybe some new pertinent priorities that are coming up in my life that are related to our current situation. Has that come up yet, or have you thought about just what that might look like in the coming months?
Good question.
I think for me, it's a space of, to be honest, I don't know where my work is coming from in the next 6 months-ish. I don't know. But like, there's like been a kind of like a reorientation in my thinking, I would say, in the past like couple of weeks of how do I be a helper in this space? And not necessarily will I get paid for that. But at the same time, there's so much, I work with churches, there's so much on their plate right now. So how do I help, and maybe package things together and give them resources that they would have to go and figure out and package on their own. So, and I feel like that's given me a lot more freedom actually in this too, to not, yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like I lost your question now, but
How has COVID maybe re-altered the way?
Yeah, just any way that this kind of just like, how has this altered your priorities and just your perspective? So I think you answered kind of spot on.
Okay. Yeah.
I think for me, there's definitely been sort of a pivot to care, to caring for people in the Anselm House community. And that community kind of spills out. It's like there's a little bit of overlap between Anselm House and City of Life and Anselm House and other communities that we're part of. And so the pivot, has been a little bit to sort of reach out to people to say, how are you doing and how are you processing, and how can we stay, to sort of raise the question, how can we stay connected? How can we pray for one another in this moment? and I guess I've given, I mean, partly because I feel like I'm just working all day anyway, I'm giving myself lots of liberty, to sort of do that while I'm doing my work. So if I'm sitting there and, Brian Fergus comes to mind, if Brian's still there, uh, I'll send him a little note and like, hey, how's it going, or whatever, just as sort of part of the fabric of my day. And that I think has been a pretty big change. And it's not been totally unwelcome. I mean, it's like, it's the right thing to do, but there's something actually really nice about that too, that I hope I don't completely lose in the post-COVID. There's a bit more of an integrity there. So anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks, Brian.
He's looking forward to that.
You better put that on your to-do list before you go to sleep tonight.
That's right. I'll do it right now.
Oh, this is happening.
In one sense, it's been like, I heard a sermon based off of 1 Peter chapter 4, and the verse read that the end of all things is at hand, therefore be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. It goes on talking about loving each other earnestly. And I just think it's so interesting that specifically in that context, in that verse, it's just like, be sober-minded, self-controlled and sober-minded. So there is a part of me that's like trying to stay disciplined, and it's almost this wartime mentality of like, you think of like chaos happening around us, and like there's an element that you should remain diligent, trust that God is good, and like do your job. But at the same time, if my dad got sick, just drop everything. I gotta go.
Mhm.
And then the reality is, if we're a family at CLC, if Jason got sick and I don't know, just something happened within us as aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers, cousins, brothers and sisters in Christ, like just drop everything. It doesn't matter, like go take care of each other. And so, yeah, I mean, shoot, like the Evansons, like Ryan and Jess, like, I'm sure that they have support networks and stuff, but like, okay, like I love a daily update on them. Just so
She's
anyway.
all better, by the way.
Was that?
She's all better, by the way.
Well, Heidi,
yeah,
I cannot believe
she's
you're sick again. I'm sorry. I know you're just. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, she's been sick for 14 days. So she started feeling better Saturday. So she told me today, she kind of giggled when Mitch prayed for her because she's finally feeling better.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't have something maybe tied to my work from home thing, but I think in general, Britt and I have been more connected and feeling more busy than average by all means, by the amount of connection through communication. Like we are having nightly hopefully only one Zoom, but we're having conference calls or one-on-ones or whatever every single night. A lot more texting, a lot more Marco Poloing kids these days. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like that this whole all of March has really kind of upped the amount of connection, even though it's a whole new type of connection, more intentionality. I'm not a social media-ite myself, and so it's always been more of like personal texting or emails or video calls or whatever. But that, yeah, we've just really seen our response to that go up big time. Everyone is kind of reaching out to one another. And so I think I'm seeing a lot of beautiful things happening within our church community in particular with that, I think. And then from a work standpoint, I'm with Sarah Joy on kind of my backlog is not very deep right now. And so this is potentially pretty affecting. And so I think I am just treating my work seriously and laboring hard and focused as I need to be. but I'm not stressing as to where it will come, because I've spent 3.5 years not stressing where my work is going to come from. And here we are. So I'm just trying to continue in that, for sure. And fun note, I am 45 minutes away from officially being done with my 15 quarantine from being national airport. So our family is clean.
Say that again. What?
Oh man, does that cut out at like all these right times?
Yeah, just
Britt
at the
and
right
I
time.
and the family. Britt and I we're wrapping up our 14-day quarantine because we were at the Arizona airport coming home, and that was 14 days ago as of 10 p.m. So it just is kind of nice because that was our most harrowing kind of public adventure, and we got through it. We didn't pick up symptoms seemingly, so
Praise the
that's
Lord.
our little celebration tonight. Yeah,
That's great. Break
You're
up
gonna
the
go out
campus.
and lick a bunch of doorknobs, right?
I already have.
Okay.
Can't wait. I got 14 more days now.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for helping instigate this. Thank you, Alex, Sarah Joy, and Jason for kind of leading our discussion, and Chris and Brian and Heidi and Tyler and Tony and Alyssa and Mitch for recording. It's a delight to see your all faces. And someday we'll have a bonfire, even if we still have to be like 10 feet away from each other.
Right.
Because screen time, as great it is, it gets a little old.
Crazy.
Yeah. Thank you guys for inspiration, helpful, meaningful. And I pray you guys, whatever labor the Lord gives you, that you continue to do it as to Him in whatever different environments. This is helpful for me, so hope it is to each other too.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you. Good night. Sleep
Bye.
well.
Night.
Night.
How do we even hang up?